The boxing bag swayed like a drunk at last call, and I was the bartender cutting him off. 3 rounds of brutal combinations, and my knuckles were screaming through the tape. But pain was good. Pain was honest. Pain didn't lie to your face for 6 months while screwing your business partner behind your back. Tommy, you're gonna punch a hole through that thing if you keep this up. Damon's voice cut through the empty gym like a rusty blade. The overhead fluorescents buzzed and flickered, casting shadows that danced across the cracked concrete floor of his basement boxing club. I unwrapped my hands, the tape stained with sweat and determination. Maybe that's the point. Or maybe you should tell me what's eating you alive instead of taking it out on my equipment. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Damon had been reading people since his cop days, back when Edgefield still had hope and a functioning police force. Now he ran this underground gym in what used to be Murphy's Auto Parts, serving beer to blue-collar guys who needed somewhere to bleed out their frustrations legally. It's Marta. The words tasted like motor oil in my mouth. Your wife? The fancy advertising executive who thinks our whole town smells like failure? That's the one. I grabbed a towel and wiped down my face. She's been working late every night for 3 months. New client, she says. Big account. Real important stuff. Damon cracked open 2 beers and slid one across the makeshift bar he'd built from an old workbench. And you don't believe her? I believed her until I saw her car parked outside the Hillcrest Resort last Tuesday. You know, that fancy lakeside place where rich people go to pretend they're roughing it? Funny thing about important client meetings, they usually don't happen at romantic cabin retreats. The beer was cold and bitter, just like everything else in my life lately. Damon leaned against the bar, his weathered face showing the kind of concern that comes from watching too many marriages explode. You confront her? What's the point? She'll just lie better next time. I took another swig. Besides, I've got bigger problems than my wife's midlife crisis. Such as her brother Greg deciding he wants to buy me out of the auto shop. Coincidentally, right around the same time Marta started working late. Damon's eyebrows shot up. Greg Patterson? The real estate guy with the BMW and the attitude problem? That's him. Came into my shop last week with papers already drawn up, offered me half what the place is worth, and acted like he was doing me a favor. Said Marta thought I'd be happier doing something less stressful. Less stressful than running the business you built from nothing? Apparently, my lovely wife has been telling her family that I'm having a breakdown. Too much pressure, too much responsibility. She's worried about my health. The gym fell silent except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on Route 9. Damon studied my face like he was reading a crime scene report. Tommy, you realize what this sounds like, right? Yeah, it sounds like my wife and her brother are trying to push me out of my own life. It sounds like conspiracy. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle down harder than necessary. Well, if they want to play games, they picked the wrong guy to mess with. The next morning came too early and too bright. Marta was already gone when I stumbled into the kitchen, but she'd left a note on the counter next to the coffee maker. Working late again tonight, don't wait up. M. No, love you. No, have a good day. Just a corporate memo from my own wife. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, then thought better of it and smoothed it out. Evidence might be useful later. The auto shop was my sanctuary, the one place where things made sense. Engines didn't lie. They either ran or they didn't. Fix the problem and they purr like kittens. If only marriages worked the same way. Morning, boss. Jake, my lead mechanic, was already elbow deep in the engine of a '98 Chevy pickup. Mrs. Patterson called, said she needs you to stop by the house around noon. Something about paperwork. Mrs. Patterson, even my own employee, called her by her maiden name now. When had that started? Did she say what kind of paperwork? Nope, just said it was important. I spent the morning rebuilding a transmission and trying not to think about what fresh hell awaited me at home. But noon came anyway, the way it always does, indifferent to human suffering. Marta was in the living room when I walked in, sitting at our dining table with papers spread out like she was planning a military campaign. She looked up when I entered, and for a split second, I saw something in her eyes that might have been guilt. But it passed so quickly I could have imagined it. "Tommy, good. Sit down. We need to talk." The papers were legal documents. I could tell by the fancy letterhead and the way they made my stomach clench just looking at them. "What's all this?" "It's an opportunity." She gestured to the chair across from her like a CEO addressing a subordinate. "Greg has been working on a development project, and he wants to include the shop property. The shop isn't for sale. Hear me out. The offer is very generous. More than generous, actually. We could pay off the mortgage, take a nice vacation, maybe think about what we really want to do with our lives." I sat down and picked up the top document. Purchase agreement. Greg Patterson, buyer, Thomas Riley, seller. The number at the bottom had a lot of zeros, but it was still insulting. "This is half what the property's worth, Marta. It's fair market value for this area. Greg had it appraised." "Greg had it appraised? When?" "Last month. He wanted to make sure his offer was reasonable." "Last month? Before he even talked to me about selling?" Marta's composure cracked slightly. "He was just being thorough. He was being presumptuous. The answer is no." I stood up and headed for the door, but her voice stopped me. "Tommy, please, just think about it. This town is dying. The shop barely breaks even most months. This could be our chance to start over somewhere better." "Somewhere better? I built that business from nothing. It's been in the black for 3 years running. And this town isn't dying. It's just not fancy enough for you anymore." "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair? How about the fact that my wife is discussing my business with her brother behind my back? How about the fact that you're trying to sell my life's work without even asking me first?" Her face flushed red. "It's not just your decision. We're married. It affects both of us." "You're right. We are married. So why don't you start acting like it?" I slammed the door on my way out, but not before I saw her reach for her phone, probably calling Greg to report that the meeting hadn't gone according to plan. The afternoon dragged by like a wounded animal. Every car that needed fixing reminded me of something else that was broken in my life. By 5 o'clock, I was ready to hit something again, so I headed back to Damon's gym. But Damon wasn't alone. 3 guys I'd known since high school were sitting at his makeshift bar, and they all looked up when I walked in. Mike Henderson, who ran the hardware store, Steve Garcia, who worked construction when there was work to be had, and Paul Murphy, whose family used to own the building before Damon converted it. "Tommy." Mike's greeting was cooler than usual. "We were just talking about you. All good things, I hope." "Actually, no." Steve turned on his bar stool to face me. "We heard about Greg Patterson's offer for your shop." News travels fast in a small town. "It does when it affects all of us," Paul said. "That property is zoned commercial. If Patterson gets his hands on it, he's planning to put in a strip mall, chain stores, corporate bullshit." So that kills what's left of Main Street," Mike said. "My hardware store can't compete with Home Depot. Steve's construction business depends on local contracts. Paul's family has been in this town for 4 generations. I looked around the room at 3 faces I'd known most of my life, faces that used to smile when they saw me. "And you think I should turn down a fortune to protect your businesses?" "We think you should consider what's best for the community," Steve said. "Not just what's best for your bank account." Community? Where was the community when I was working 16-hour days to keep the shop afloat? Where was the community when I needed a loan to expand and the bank turned me down? "That's different," Paul said. "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you guys only care about community when it benefits you." Mike stood up, his face getting red. That's not fair, Tommy. We've all supported each other over the years. Have you? Because I seem to remember when your hardware store was struggling 2 years ago, and I sent every customer who needed supplies your way, instead of telling them to drive to the big box store in the next town over. I remember when Steve needed someone to vouch for him with the city council, and I showed up to every meeting. I remember when Paul's dad was sick, and I fixed his car for free every month for a year. We appreciate all that, Steve said, but his voice lacked conviction. Do you? Because right now it feels like you appreciate it right up until it becomes inconvenient for you. The room fell silent. Damon, who had been cleaning glasses behind the bar, finally spoke up. Maybe we should all take a step back here. No, I said. I think we should get this out in the open. You guys want me to turn down a life-changing amount of money to protect businesses that barely acknowledge I exist most of the time. You want me to sacrifice my future for a community that only remembers I'm part of it when they need something. It's not like that, Mike said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Isn't it? When's the last time any of you came to the shop just to say hello? When's the last time you invited me to poker night or asked how Marta and I were doing? When's the last time you treated me like a friend instead of just another business owner you might need a favor from? Paul shifted uncomfortably. We've all been busy. Busy, right. I headed for the door. Well, don't worry about it anymore. From now on, we can all be busy separately. I walked out into the evening air, leaving behind 3 of the oldest friendships I had. But it felt less like a loss, and more like finally admitting something that had been true for a long time. The house was empty when I got home. Another note from Marta. Client dinner, back late. M. I crumpled this one up and didn't bother smoothing it out. The next few days passed in a blur of routine and resentment. Marta continued her pattern of early departures and late returns. Greg called twice, leaving increasingly aggressive voicemails about the time-sensitive nature of his offer. Mike, Steve, and Paul made a point of avoiding the shop, which meant avoiding me entirely in a town this size. By Thursday, I was ready to do something stupid. Fortunately, Damon called before I could figure out what that might be. Tommy, you need to get down here now. Why? What's wrong? Just get here, and bring your camera. I found Damon parked across the street from the Hillcrest Resort, binoculars in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. He handed me the binoculars and pointed toward the main lodge. Cabin 12. Been watching for an hour. I focused the binoculars and felt my stomach drop. Marta's silver Lexus was parked next to a black BMW I recognized as Greg's. Through the cabin window, I could see 2 figures sitting close together on a couch. How long have you known? I asked. Suspected for a week. Confirmed it this morning. Tommy, I'm sorry. I watched my wife laugh at something her brother-in-law said, watched her lean closer to him, watched her put her hand on his arm. The binoculars made everything crystal clear, including the fact that my marriage was over. Get some pictures, I said. You sure? I'm sure. Damon had a camera with a telephoto lens, a leftover from his police days. We spent an hour documenting my wife's affair with clinical precision. Marta and Greg on the cabin porch, Marta and Greg walking hand in hand down to the lake, Marta and Greg kissing like teenagers behind the boathouse. This is enough, I finally said. Let's go. We drove back to town in silence. The photos were damning, but they also felt like evidence of my own failure. How had I not seen this coming? How had I been so blind? What are you going to do? Damon asked as we pulled into the gym parking lot. I don't know yet, but it's going to be something they remember. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the photos spread out on the table like a poker hand, a very bad poker hand. My phone buzzed with a text from Marta. Working late again. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, have fun with Greg. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. An hour later my phone rang. Marta. Tommy, we need to talk. I agree. Come home. I can't. Not tonight, but tomorrow. We'll sit down and discuss everything. Everything? That's a big word, Marta. You sure you want to discuss everything? Silence on the other end. Then, what do you mean? I mean, I know about Greg. I know about the cabin. I know about all of it. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, I'm sorry. Are you? Are you really sorry, or are you just sorry you got caught? Tommy, please. It's complicated. No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You're sleeping with your brother-in-law and trying to steal my business. The only complicated part is figuring out which one of you came up with the plan first. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me, Marta. Help me understand how screwing your husband's business partner while trying to force him to sell his life's work is complicated. Another long pause. I'll be home tomorrow morning. We'll talk then. No. We'll talk now. You want to explain? Start explaining. I can't do this over the phone. You can't do it at all, because there's no explanation that makes this okay. There's no story that turns you into the victim here. Tommy, I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen. For months. This wasn't a mistake, Marta. This was a choice. A series of choices. And now you have to live with the consequences. I hung up before she could respond. Friday morning came gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that makes everything look like a crime scene. Marta's car was in the driveway when I left for work, but I didn't go inside. Whatever she had to say could wait until I was ready to hear it. The shop was busy, which was good. Staying busy meant staying distracted. But around noon, Jake came into my office with a worried expression. Boss, you might want to see this. He handed me his phone, open to the local Facebook community page. Someone had posted a photo of Marta and Greg at the resort, along with a caption that read, "Looks like some people in town are getting very close to their in-laws. Edgefield gossip. Small town drama." The post already had 37 comments and counting. Most of them were shocked reactions and gossip-hungry speculation. A few were defending Marta, saying people should mind their own business. But the damage was done. In a town like Edgefield, this kind of scandal spread faster than a grease fire. Any idea who posted it? I asked. Anonymous account. Could be anyone. But I had a pretty good idea who it was. Damon had always said that sometimes justice needed a little help finding its way to the surface. My phone buzzed. Text from Marta. We need to talk. Now. I drove home to find Marta pacing the living room like a caged animal. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and her makeup couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes. Did you see it? She asked without preamble. The Facebook post? Yeah, I saw it. Did you post it? No, but I can't say I'm upset about it. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. How can you be so calm about this? Our private business is all over the internet. Our private business? Marta, you've been having an affair with your brother-in-law for months. You've been lying to me every day. You've been plotting to steal my business. And you're worried about a Facebook post? I wasn't stealing anything. Greg's offer was legitimate. Greg's offer was a setup, a way to get me out of the picture so you two could be together without the inconvenience of me hanging around. She sat down heavily on the couch, her composure finally cracking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Walk me through the plan, Marta. Help me understand the timeline here. There was no plan. Greg and I just connected. We understood each other. When did it start? Tommy, please. When did it start? 6 months ago, at your birthday party. My birthday party, the one she'd insisted on having at the country club. The one where Greg had spent the evening complaining about his wife and his business problems. The one where Marta had been so attentive to him that I'd joked about it later. 6 months. So this whole thing with the shop offer, that was Greg's idea. He thought if you had financial security, it might make the transition easier. The transition to what? Being divorced and unemployed? The transition to both of us being happy. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Happy? Right. And what about Greg's wife? What about Elena? Was she supposed to be happy too? Marta's face went pale. Elena doesn't know. Are you sure about that? What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the Facebook post. Look at the comments, Marta. Really look at them. She scrolled through the responses, her face getting paler with each one. Near the bottom, there was a comment from Elena Patterson. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Some people deserve to know the truth about their spouses. Oh, God, Marta whispered. Yeah, oh, God. Turns out your little secret wasn't as secret as you thought. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Thomas Riley? The voice was female, crisp, professional. Yes. This is Elena Patterson. I believe we need to talk. I looked at Marta, who was staring at me with growing horror. Yes, I said. I believe we do. Can you meet me at Damon's gym in an hour? I think we have some mutual interest to discuss. I'll be there. I hung up and headed for the door. Tommy, wait, Marta called after me. Where are you going? To have a conversation with someone who's been as screwed over by this situation as I have. What does that mean? It means your boyfriend's wife wants to chat, and I'm very interested in what she has to say. Elena Patterson was not what I expected. I'd seen her at community events over the years, but always from a distance. Up close, she was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty. Sharp cheekbones, steel gray eyes, and the kind of posture that suggested she'd never backed down from a fight in her life. She was sitting at Damon's bar when I arrived, nursing a whiskey and looking like she was planning a war. Mr. Riley, thank you for coming. Call me Tommy, and thank you for posting that photo. I didn't post it, but I know who did, and I asked them to. Damon appeared from the back room, took one look at the situation, and made himself scarce. Elena and I were alone in the dim light of the gym, two casualties of the same betrayal. How long have you known? I asked. About the affair? 3 weeks? About the business scheme? As of this morning? How did you find out? Greg's not as smart as he thinks he is. He left his laptop open and I saw the text messages. All of them. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. Messages between Greg and Marta that made my stomach turn. Not just romantic declarations, but detailed discussions about the shop, about me, about how to handle the Tommy problem. They called me a problem? Among other things, your wife seems to think you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Greg thinks you're a small-town loser who doesn't deserve what he's built. And what do you think? Elena studied me for a moment. I think you're a man who's been played for a fool by people who underestimated you. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What do you suggest? I suggest we make them pay. Over the next hour, Elena laid out everything she knew. Greg's real estate business was leveraged to the hilt. He needed the shop property not for development, but as collateral for a loan that would keep him from bankruptcy. Marta had been feeding him information about our finances, helping him craft an offer that would force me to sell. He's broke? I asked. Worse than broke. He owes money to some very unpleasant people, the kind who don't accept payment plans. How do you know all this? Because I'm the one who's been keeping his business afloat for the past 2 years. My family has money, Tommy, real money. Greg married me for my trust fund, and I've been bankrolling his failures ever since. Why? Because I loved him, or thought I did. Because I believed his promises about building something together. Because I was as much of a fool as you were. Elena's voice was steady, but I could see the pain behind her eyes. We sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd been betrayed by the same lie. So what's your plan? I asked. Simple. I cut off his funding, immediately. Let his creditors know he's no longer good for the money. Watch his little empire crumble. And Marta? That's up to you. But I have some ideas. Elena's ideas were thorough, creative, and absolutely ruthless. By the time she finished explaining, I was beginning to understand why Greg had fallen for her. She wasn't just beautiful. She was brilliant. And right now, that brilliance was focused like a laser on revenge. When do we start? I asked. We already have. I made some phone calls before I came here. Greg's going to have a very interesting Monday morning. I drove home that evening with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in months. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't just reacting to other people's plans. I was making my own. Marta was waiting for me in the kitchen, still wearing the same clothes from our earlier conversation. She looked like she'd been crying. "How did it go?" she asked. "Interesting. Elena's a remarkable woman. I can see why Greg married her." "Tommy, please, can we just talk about us? About what happens next?" "What happens next is very simple, Marta. You're going to pack a bag and go stay with your mother for a while. We're going to get divorced, and you're going to find a new job, because I have a feeling your current one is about to become very uncomfortable." "What does that mean?" "It means Elena has some interesting connections in the advertising world. Turns out your boss and her college roommate are very close friends." Marta's face went white. "You can't do that." "I'm not doing anything. Elena is simply sharing some information with people who might find it relevant. Information about an employee who's been using company resources to conduct a personal affair." "I never used company resources." "Didn't you? All those late nights at the office? All those client dinners that were actually romantic getaways? All those business trips that weren't business at all?" Marta opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. We both knew she was caught. "What about the house?" she asked finally. "What about it? It's in my name. Bought with money from my business. The business you and Greg tried to steal." "Tommy, be reasonable. I have nowhere else to go." "You should have thought of that before you decided to blow up our marriage." I headed upstairs to pack her a bag, but she followed me. "This isn't over," she said. "Greg won't let you destroy him." "Greg's going to be too busy trying to stay out of bankruptcy court to worry about me. And even if he wasn't, what's he going to do? Sue me for refusing to sell my own property? He has connections, important people who can make life difficult for you." Had connections. Past tense. "Elena's been very busy this afternoon." I tossed some of her clothes into a suitcase, not bothering to fold them carefully. "Besides, Marta, you're missing the bigger picture here." Which is? "Which is that I don't care anymore. You and Greg took my marriage, tried to take my business, and turned my friends against me. You destroyed everything I thought I could count on. But you know what? You also freed me from caring about what happens to either of you." I zipped up the suitcase and set it by the bedroom door. "You wanted me to sell the shop and start over somewhere else? Congratulations. You got half of what you wanted. I am starting over, just not the way you planned." Marta stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "Yes, you did. Maybe not at first, but somewhere along the way, you made a choice to hurt me rather than be honest with me. You chose Greg over our marriage. You chose money over loyalty. You chose lies over truth. Those were all deliberate decisions, Marta. Own them." She picked up the suitcase and headed for the stairs. At the top, she turned back. "What if I ended it with Greg? What if we tried counseling?" "It's too late for that." "It doesn't have to be." "Yes, it does. Because even if you ended it with Greg, even if you begged for forgiveness, even if you did everything right from this moment forward, I would never trust you again. And a marriage without trust isn't a marriage at all." I watched her walk down the stairs and out of my life. The house felt different immediately, not empty, but clean, like someone had finally opened the windows and let out months of stale air. My phone buzzed. Text from Elena. "Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? I typed back, "What's Phase 2? "The fun part." Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes everything seem possible. I was at the shop early, working on a transmission rebuild, when Jake came running in with his phone. "Boss, you gotta see this." The local news website had a story about Greg's real estate company. Patterson Development faces bankruptcy after major investor withdraws support. The article was thorough and damning, detailing Greg's financial problems and questionable business practices. "How did they get all this information?" Jake asked. "Good reporting, I guess." My phone rang. "Greg." "Tommy, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Meet me at the diner in an hour." "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I'm going to make your life very difficult." "More difficult than it already is?" "That's impressive, Greg. You've already stolen my wife and tried to steal my business. What's left?" "You have no idea what I'm capable of." "You're right. I don't. But I know what Elena's capable of, and frankly, I'm more impressed with her approach." Silence on the other end. Then, "Elena doesn't know what she's doing." "Doesn't she?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she knows exactly what she's doing, and she's very good at it." "Tommy, listen to me. You're making a mistake. Walk away from this. Take my offer on the shop and walk away." "Your offer? Greg, you're broke. You couldn't buy a cup of coffee right now, let alone a piece of commercial real estate." "I have other resources." "Had other resources. Past tense. Your wife was your only resource, and she's not your wife anymore." Another silence. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Elena filed for divorce this morning. I mean, she's freezing all joint accounts. I mean, she's calling in every loan and every favor you owe. I mean, you're finished, Greg." I hung up before he could respond. An hour later, I was having lunch at Murphy's Diner when Greg walked in. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and his face had the gray pallor of a man watching his world collapse. He slid into the booth across from me without being invited. "You think you're very clever," he said. "I think I'm very lucky. Lucky to have found out what kind of people you and Marta really are before you could do any more damage." "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You're broke, Greg. Your business is finished. Your wife is divorcing you. Your girlfriend is moving back in with her mother. What exactly are you going to do to me that hasn't already been done?" Greg leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I'm messing with a failed real estate developer who's about to lose everything. Frankly, it's not that intimidating. I have friends, people who owe me favors." "Had friends. Past tense. Elena's been very thorough about calling in those favors herself." Greg's face went red. "You're going to regret this." "Am I?" "Because right now I feel better than I have in months. For the first time in years, I'm not worried about what Marta thinks of me, or whether you approve of my choices, or whether I'm living up to everyone else's expectations. I'm free, Greg, and that's the opposite of regret." I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. "Lunch is on me. Consider it a going-away present." As I walked toward the door, Greg called after me. "This isn't over, Tommy." I turned back. "You keep saying that, but look around, Greg. Look at your life. Look at what you've lost. Look at what you're facing. It's over. It's been over since the moment you decided to mess with my marriage and my business. You just didn't know it yet." The diner was full of people I'd known for years. People who'd heard the gossip, seen the Facebook posts, read the news articles. People who were watching this confrontation with the kind of fascination usually reserved for car accidents. "You want to know what's really over?" I said, loud enough for the whole place to hear. "What's over is people like you coming into this town and thinking you can take whatever you want from people like us. What's over is assuming that being rich and connected makes you untouchable. What's over is the idea that regular people don't fight back." I looked around the diner, making eye contact with faces I'd known since childhood. Greg Patterson came to this town thinking he could buy and sell us like commodities. He thought he could steal my business, wreck my marriage, and walk away richer for it. He thought wrong. The diner was dead silent. Greg sat frozen in the booth, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. Some of you probably think I should have taken his money and kept quiet. Some of you probably think I'm being vindictive. Maybe I am. But sometimes vindictive is what the situation calls for. Sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back harder than they hit you. I headed for the door again, but Greg's voice stopped me one more time. You'll never prove any of this in court. I smiled. I don't need to prove it in court, Greg. I just need to prove it to the people who matter. And I think I've done that. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, legal meetings, and paperwork. Elena was divorcing Greg and taking everything he couldn't prove he'd earned independently. Marta was staying with her mother and looking for a new job after her boss decided her personal complications made her a liability to the agency. Greg's creditors were circling like vultures, and his business was hemorrhaging clients faster than he could count them. But the real satisfaction came on Thursday afternoon when Mike Henderson walked into my shop. "Tommy, you got a minute?" I looked up from the engine I was working on. "Depends. You here as a customer or as someone who thinks I should sacrifice my future for the good of the community?" Mike had the decency to look embarrassed. "I'm here to apologize." "For what?" "For being an ass. For assuming you owed us something just because we've all known each other for a long time. For not supporting you when you needed support." I wiped my hands on a shop rag and gave him my full attention. "Go on." "Steve and Paul feel the same way. We were wrong. We let our fear about the future make us forget who our real friends are." "And who are your real friends, Mike?" "You are. You've always been. Even when we didn't deserve it." I studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity. But Mike had never been good at lying, and he wasn't trying to lie now. "What changed your mind?" "Elena Patterson came to see me yesterday, told me the whole story, about Greg's financial problems, about the real reason he wanted your property, about how you and Marta were being set up." "Elena's been busy." "She has. She also told me about how you could have sold the shop and walked away rich, but you chose to fight instead. She said you did it partly to protect the town, even after the way we treated you. Elena's giving me too much credit. I did it because I was angry." "Maybe, but the result is the same. Patterson's development company is finished. The strip mall project is dead. Main Street is safe." Mike extended his hand. "I'm hoping you'll give us another chance to be the kind of friends you deserve." I shook his hand, but I didn't smile. "Mike, I appreciate the apology. I really do. But things are different now." "Different how?" "Different because I've learned something about myself over the past few weeks. I've learned that I don't need other people's approval to feel good about my choices. I've learned that loyalty is something you earn, not something you demand. And I've learned that sometimes the people who claim to be your friends are really just people who want to use you." Mike's face fell. "So, we can't be friends? We can be neighbors. We can be polite to each other. We can do business together. But friends? Real friends? That's going to take time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all." "I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. You didn't come here because you realized you were wrong, Mike. You came here because Elena told you the truth about what was really happening. If she hadn't explained it to you, you'd still think I was the selfish bastard who put money ahead of community loyalty." Mike started to protest, but I held up a hand. "I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true, and until you can admit that it's true, we can't move forward." Mike was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're right. I came here because Elena made me realize I'd been an idiot. But Tommy, doesn't that count for something? The fact that I'm willing to admit I was wrong? It counts for something. But it doesn't erase the fact that when I needed you to trust me, you didn't. When I needed you to give me the benefit of the doubt, you didn't. When I needed you to be my friend, you weren't. So what do I have to do? Nothing. You don't have to do anything, Mike. Just understand that friendship isn't something you can turn on and off like a light switch. It's something you build over time, and it's something you can lose in an instant. Mike nodded slowly. I'll earn it back. Maybe. We'll see. After he left, I went back to work on the engine. But my mind was elsewhere, thinking about friendship and loyalty and the difference between the two. Friday evening, I was closing up the shop when Elena's car pulled into the parking lot. She got out wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. Buy you a drink? She asked. I know a place. We walked over to Damon's gym, where the usual crowd of blue-collar guys was nursing beers and arguing about sports. Elena fit in better than I'd expected, trading jokes with the regulars and holding her own in a debate about the local high school football team. You're full of surprises, I told her, as we found a quiet table in the corner. So are you. When Damon first told me about you, I expected someone bitter and broken. Instead, I found someone who was ready to fight back. Damon told you about me? We've been friends for years. His ex-wife was my college roommate. When I saw that Facebook post and realized what was happening, I called him for advice. And he suggested we team up? He suggested I talk to you before I did anything drastic. He said you were the kind of person who deserved to know the truth. We drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching Damon work behind the bar. The gym felt different tonight, warmer, more welcoming. Maybe it was the company, or maybe it was just the knowledge that I'd finally stopped letting other people define my life for me. What's next for you? Elena asked. I don't know. Keep running the shop, maybe expand it, maybe travel, maybe nothing. For the first time in years, I get to decide. And Marta? What about her? Are you going to miss her? I thought about it. I'm going to miss who I thought she was. But the real Marta, the one who could lie to my face for 6 months while planning to steal my business? No, I won't miss her at all. That's very healthy. Is it? Because sometimes I think I should be more broken up about this. Sometimes I think there's something wrong with me for being relieved instead of devastated. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying me. Tommy, can I tell you something? Sure. Your marriage was over long before you found out about the affair. Maybe it was over years ago. The affair was just the excuse you needed to finally admit it. What makes you say that? Because I've been watching you for the past week. You're not acting like a man who lost the love of his life. You're acting like a man who finally escaped from prison. She was right, and we both knew it. Marta and I had been going through the motions for years, staying together out of habit rather than love. The affair had hurt my pride more than my heart. What about you? I asked. Are you going to miss Greg? I'm going to miss the man I thought I married. But that man never really existed. Greg has always been selfish and manipulative. I just chose not to see it. Why? Because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. Rich girl meets charming man, they build an empire together, they live happily ever after. It's a nice story. It's just not true. Elena finished her drink and stood up. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Moving day. I'm leaving Edgefield. I felt a stab of disappointment that surprised me. Where are you going? Back to Chicago. My family has business interests there, and I need to start rebuilding my life. That makes sense. Does it? Because part of me wonders if I'm just running away. From what? From the possibility that not everything in this town is poisoned by what happened. We looked at each other across the table, and for a moment, I thought she might be talking about more than just geography. Elena, I know, it's too soon, too complicated, too much history. All of that. But maybe what? Maybe complicated isn't always bad. Maybe sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. She smiled. Maybe, but not today. Today, I need to focus on putting my life back together. And you need to do the same. And after that? After that, we'll see. She kissed my cheek and headed for the door. Take care of yourself, Tommy Riley. You too, Elena Patterson. I watched her drive away, then ordered another beer and tried to figure out how I felt about being alone again. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was working in my garage at home when a car pulled into the driveway. Greg got out, but this wasn't the confident, arrogant Greg I'd known for years. This was a broken man, wearing wrinkled clothes and the desperate expression of someone with nothing left to lose. Tommy, I need to talk to you. We've talked enough, Greg. Please, 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I put down my tools and gave him my attention. I'm leaving town, he said. Good. I wanted to apologize before I go. For what? The affair? The business scheme? The threats? You're going to have to be more specific. Greg sat down heavily on my workbench. For all of it. You're right. I came to this town thinking I could take whatever I wanted. I thought people like you were easy marks. People like me? Blue-collar guys, small-town guys, people without connections or education or money. I thought you'd roll over and take whatever I offered. And instead, you destroyed me. I looked at Greg's haggard face and felt something I didn't expect. Pity. I didn't destroy you, Greg. You destroyed yourself. I just refused to be destroyed with you. Elena's taking everything. Elena's taking back what was hers to begin with. I know she has every right. But Tommy, I'm going to lose everything. The house, the business, the cars, everything. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I feel bad for you? Because I don't. Greg was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to know why you didn't just take the money and walk away. You could have been rich. You could have started over somewhere else. Why did you choose to fight? It was a fair question, and it deserved an honest answer. Because this is my life, Greg. This shop, this town, this community, flawed as it is. This is what I built. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let someone like you take it away from me just because you think you're entitled to it. Someone like me? Someone who thinks money gives you the right to treat other people like they don't matter. Someone who thinks being rich means being better. Someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Greg nodded slowly. You're right. That's exactly what I thought. And now? Now I know better. Too late, but I know better. He stood up and headed for his car. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, Tommy, you're a better man than I am. I know. Greg almost smiled at that. Yeah, I guess you do. After he left, I went back to work on my car, but I couldn't concentrate. Something about the conversation had left me unsettled, though I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was the realization that revenge, satisfying as it was, didn't actually fix anything. Greg was still the same selfish, manipulative person he'd always been. Marta was still the same disloyal, dishonest woman she'd become. I'd won the battle, but the victory felt hollow. Or maybe it was the knowledge that I'd become someone I didn't entirely recognize. The old Tommy would have been satisfied with Greg's apology. The old Tommy would have felt bad about destroying someone's life, even someone who deserved it. But the old Tommy had been naive. He'd believed in fairness and second chances and the fundamental decency of people. The new Tommy knew better. The question was, which version of myself did I want to be? Sunday afternoon, I was having lunch at Murphy's Diner when Damon slid into the booth across from me. You look like hell, he said. Thanks. You always know just what to say. What's eating you? You got everything you wanted. Greg's gone, Marta's gone, your business is safe, you should be celebrating. Should I? Shouldn't you? I pushed my food around on my plate, not really hungry. Damon, can I ask you something? Shoot. When you were a cop, did you ever arrest someone who deserved it but still felt bad about it afterward? Every day. Why? Because I keep thinking about Greg yesterday. He looked broken, completely broken. And I know he brought it on himself, but part of me wonders if I went too far. Damon leaned back in his seat, studying my face. Tommy, let me ask you something. If Greg had succeeded in his plan, where would you be right now? Broke, divorced, probably out of town. And would he have felt bad about that? No. Would he have lost any sleep over destroying your life? No. Then why are you losing sleep over his? It was a good question, and I didn't have a good answer. Because I'm not him? Exactly. You're not him. You're a decent person who did what he had to do to protect himself. That doesn't make you a villain, Tommy. That makes you human. Then why do I feel like a villain? Because you're not used to fighting back. You're used to being the nice guy, the one who gets taken advantage of. But sometimes being nice isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be strong. Damon was right, but it didn't make me feel any better. What about Elena? He asked. What about her? You going to see her again? She's moving to Chicago. That's not what I asked. I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. Why not? Because it's complicated. Because we're both coming out of messy situations. Because I'm not sure I'm ready to trust anyone again. Or because you're scared. Of what? Of being happy. Of taking a chance on something good. Of admitting that maybe this whole mess led you to something better. I looked around the diner, at the familiar faces and the comfortable routine of small-town life. It was a good life, but it was also a small life. Maybe it was time to think bigger. She's probably better off without me anyway, I said. That's not your decision to make. Isn't it? No. It's hers, and you're not giving her the chance to make it. Damon stood up and dropped some money on the table. Tommy, you spent 20 years letting other people make decisions for you. Don't start again now. Monday morning, I called Elena. I was wondering if you'd call, she said. I almost didn't. What changed your mind? A friend reminded me that I've been letting other people make my decisions for too long. And what decision are you making now? I'm deciding to ask if you'd like some company in Chicago. Silence on the other end. Then, for how long? I don't know. A weekend, a month, forever. I guess we'd have to figure it out as we go. That's very unlike you. The old me, maybe. The new me is still figuring out what he's like. And what if it doesn't work out? Then it doesn't work out. But at least we'll know we tried. Another pause. Tommy, are you sure about this? You're talking about leaving everything you've built. I'm talking about building something new, with someone who understands what it's like to start over. It's a big risk. So was fighting Greg. So was standing up to my friends. So was refusing to be the victim. I'm getting used to taking risks. Elena laughed. When can you be here? How's next weekend? Perfect. I'll send you my address. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the past few weeks and the choices I'd made. Some of those choices had been about revenge, but the best ones had been about something else entirely. They'd been about refusing to accept other people's definitions of who I was supposed to be. They'd been about fighting for what mattered to me. They'd been about choosing my own future instead of letting others choose it for me. I called Jake into the office. How would you feel about running this place for a while? How long is a while? I'm not sure. Maybe a few months. Maybe longer. Jake grinned. I've been waiting for you to ask that question for 5 years. Think you can handle it? Boss, I've been handling most of it already. You just haven't noticed. He was right. I'd been so focused on holding on to control that I'd forgotten I'd hired good people for a reason. What about the business side? The books, the contracts, the customer relationships? I'll figure it out. And if I can't, I'll call you. Jake, this isn't a vacation. I might not come back. I know, and that's okay. This place will survive without you, Tommy. The question is whether you can survive without it. It was a good question. For 20 years, the shop had been my identity. I was Tommy Riley, the guy who owned the auto shop. Without it, who was I? I guess I was about to find out. Thursday evening, I was packing when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Marta standing on my porch, looking nervous and uncertain. Can I come in? Why? Because I heard you're leaving town and I wanted to say goodbye. I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. It feels different, she said. Everything's different. Tommy, I want you to know that I never meant for things to end this way. How did you mean for them to end? I hoped we could be civilized about it. Maybe even stay friends. Friends? We were married for 15 years. That has to count for something. I sat down on the couch and looked at this woman I'd shared my life with for so long. She seemed smaller somehow, diminished by everything that had happened. Marta, can I ask you something? Of course. When did you stop loving me? The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe I never stopped. Maybe I just stopped remembering why I loved you in the first place. And Greg? Do you love him? I thought I did. But I think I was just in love with the idea of being someone different, someone more sophisticated, more successful, more important. And now? Now I realize that trying to be someone you're not is exhausting and lonely. We sat in silence for a few minutes, two people who'd shared a life and lost it somewhere along the way. Are you happy? She asked. I'm getting there. With Elena? Maybe. We'll see. She's a good choice. Better than me, probably. She's different than you. Whether that makes her better is something we'll have to figure out. Marta stood up and headed for the door. I hope it works out, Tommy. I really do. Thanks. And I hope someday you can forgive me. I already have. Really? Really. Staying angry at you would be like staying angry at a storm for ruining a picnic. It happened, it's over, and now I get to decide what to do next. She smiled sadly. I wish I could be that philosophical about it. You will be. Give it time. After she left, I finished packing. 1 suitcase, 1 duffel bag, and a box of tools. Everything else could wait. Friday morning, I said goodbye to Jake and the crew at the shop. It was harder than I'd expected, but also easier. These guys would be fine without me. Maybe better than fine. I drove to Damon's gym for one last beer and one last conversation. You nervous? He asked. Terrified. Good. That means it matters. What if I'm making a mistake? Then you'll make another mistake trying to fix it. That's how life works. Very philosophical. I'm a philosophical guy. It comes from watching too many people make the same mistakes over and over again. And what mistake am I making? You're not making a mistake. You're taking a chance. There's a difference. I finished my beer and stood up. Take care of yourself, Damon. You too. And Tommy? Yeah? Don't look back. Whatever happens in Chicago, don't look back. This town will still be here if you need it. But right now, you need to find out who you are when you're not defined by it. I drove out of Edgefield on a clear October morning, watching the familiar landmarks disappear in my rearview mirror. The auto shop, the diner, the gym, the house where I'd lived my married life. All of it getting smaller and smaller until it was just a memory. But I wasn't thinking about what I was leaving behind. I was thinking about what I was driving toward. A new city, a new life, a new chance to be the person I was supposed to be, instead of the person everyone expected me to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Safe travels. Can't wait to see you. I texted back, "On my way." And for the first time in months, maybe years, I was genuinely excited about what came next. The highway stretched out ahead of me, empty and full of possibilities. In the distance, Chicago's skyline was beginning to emerge from the morning haze. Somewhere in that city was a woman who understood what it meant to start over, to fight back, to refuse to be a victim. Somewhere in that city was my future. I pressed down on the accelerator and drove toward it, leaving the past exactly where it belonged, behind me.